Yes, sir. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. I'm Swiper Cam. Welcome back to the channel and first solo episode with Mile High Sports. Now, I know that y'all been asking about new content. When we gonna get more content? We need more. We want more. Tell us about the Denver Nuggets. Tell us about the NBA. Well, here you go. Make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Make sure you're subscribing to Mile High Sports. You're going to continue to get great content from people like myself, Cody Work, Ryan Blackburn, and many, many others. So it's going to be an excellent opportunity for you to get a deeper dive into what's happening in your city with your favorite player. So, man, I don't know about y'all, but it's taken me a little bit to decompress. Now, if you saw last night's game versus the Chicago Bulls, you probably went to bed either irritated, feeling apathetic, disgusted, embarrassed, or one or the other. Because the thing is that the Denver Nuggets had an opportunity to continue to extend their win streak. They had been killing it the last 15 games. They've been killing it the last 10 games. And here they go, show up against the Chicago Bulls, and they ended up getting put out by 21 points at home. Man, so as expected, whenever Jokic doesn't play well defensively, there's like these Twitter videos going around from 76ers fans and surprisingly Bucks fans who are trying to tear down his MVP case by saying he doesn't play defense. And so therefore they're putting out all these videos and you got to deal with that stuff on a day-to-day basis. Now, I said what I said last night on my channel, and if you're on Mile High Sports, you haven't had a chance to watch it, highly recommend you go back and watch. But that was a one-game sample size in an 82-game season. Now, I'm frustrated because you want the Nuggets to execute well. You want Jokic to play well. You want Murray to play well. You want them to take care of business. But at the end of the day, sometimes in the NBA, you just don't have it that night. When you're playing against lesser competition at times, you might not always be as keyed in as you need to be. But the good news is they have an opportunity to get a bounce-back game tomorrow versus the San Antonio Spurs. But yesterday, DeRozan cooking, Levine cooking, Vooch cooking. AO cooking, Kobe White cooking. So there are a lot of different things that went into what happened yesterday. First and foremost, Jokic and Murray did not play well. Again, 82-game season. Don't want to make too big of a deal about it, but it was frustrating. It was sure frustrating to watch. But what I want to say, what I want to encourage you to continue to do is that we haven't had Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and Nikola Jokic on the court for the last 2 seasons. And right now, the Denver Nuggets have 16 games left in the regular season. 16 games. So you have made it through 66 games, and the Nuggets are 46-20 with the second best record in the NBA, with a chance to push for the first best record in the NBA. And it's all because the team has bought into an identity. They're playing together. They're healthier than they've been, Lord willing. We hope that stays that way. But there's been a lot of great opportunity for the Denver Nuggets to make runs this season, and they've done it repeatedly. And you've seen great individual basketball play as well. So what I want to encourage you to do is just continue to enjoy the season, because you know you play against the Spurs on Friday. You get another game versus the Brooklyn Nets without KD and Kyrie Irving, obviously, but with Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith, Seth Curry, and a host of other players. And it's not going to be the best competition. You're going to get that at the end of March with the 76ers and the Bucks for sure, and the Warriors for sure, and the Kings for sure. But it's good to take advantage of the fact that the Denver Nuggets, they're playing really good basketball. They're playing really good basketball, and they're playing together. And even if you have an underwhelming performance like that, remember where you were last year. Just remember where you were last year. And that way you continue to enjoy the ride. Enjoy the process. It's fun. Basketball is fun. The regular season, as long as it can be, is still fun. So we want to make sure we're doing that, man. So, again, it was a really good game to watch if you're a Bulls fan. If you're a Denver Nuggets fan, it was atrocious. And the Bulls, they got a much-needed win in the playoff hunt. Yesterday, Jokic did give almost any effort defensively. He was passing up shots. Jamal Murray was hunting for that three-point record. It's just a lot of different things were happening. And you felt like the team was taking the foot off the gas at times. They were pushing it at times. So, again, real reason to be frustrated. But I look at that game as a microcosm of here's a team that has been committed the entire season to playing winning basketball and playing it at a high level. And They just didn't have it that night. So I want to take a moment, acknowledge that, and then move on, because I think that would be best for everybody. And then also, too, again, you got a real quick turnaround with the Spurs coming up. So that's another small recap from yesterday. You know, I was still struggling with it a little bit this morning, just because you want to see them do better. But at the end of the day, it's a team on the other side of the conference, a team that you're only going to see twice a year, and you've already seen them twice. You beat them once on their floor by double digits. So it is what it is. We move. But the big story that I really want us to get into and tap into is the MVP race. I have been thinking about doing a video on this for quite some time. I have definitely thought about addressing this for quite some time. If you've been on Twitter, I definitely have addressed this at times. But the MVP race has turned from being a fun, celebratory event where you got Nikola Jokic campaigning for his third straight MVP, the first since Larry Bird in 1984 to 1986. There's only two other players outside of that have ever done that before. So you've had an opportunity to watch Jokic average a triple-double on the year. There was a point in time in the season where he was putting up 30 points a game on great efficiency. You've seen him where he's been a low-volume scorer, but playmaking at a very high level. And again, he's averaging 24, 12, and 10, 70% true shooting. It's been a one-of-a-kind year in the NBA. No one in NBA history has ever had a season like this. So there's been a lot to celebrate, a lot to take from it. But since the Tim Bontemps poll, part 2 came out, remember, Jokic was 5th in the first one. Since the second one came out, Jokic was the runaway favorite to win the MVP award with 77 first-place votes. And ever since then, it's been Bucks fans, 76ers fans, media members, Boston Celtics fans. People have attacked Jokic, they've attacked the voting process, they've attacked the media, because they have felt like Jokic is being unfairly pushed forward. Now, the crazy thing about it is that Jokic has done nothing to himself to earn any of that. He's done nothing himself to garner any unwanted attention when it comes to the MVP race, because he himself has said that I really just don't care. I don't. And if you want to have these conversations, if you want to award me the award, great. And he might want to win it, but he's not going to verbalize it, because that's not what he's about. He knows at this time in his career, it's all about championships. It's all about championships. So we're in a situation now where we are watching Jokic have an all-time great season, his third straight year of just utter greatness. And now the narrative has shifted completely away from basketball, where you got Kendrick Perkins going on air and suggesting that the reason that Jokic is winning is because of white privilege and other things like that. You have J.J. Redick going on air and pushing back and saying, well, are you suggesting that there's racism or implicit bias amongst the NBA voters, and saying that no, absolutely not. So you have these two men that are on these two extremes, and because of that, now you have some of the worst Twitter accounts imaginable, people with these crazy ideological views, and some people that are even downright racist that are now jumping on board with the MVP train and rooting for Jokic to be the state person of what they want to see with the NBA, what they want to see with the world, and this turned extremely toxic. Extremely toxic. So what's crazy about it is that we're in a situation now where we're having to have discussions about what's happening with the season, what's happening with Jokic, and does he actually deserve the MVP award? And I think that we're in a situation now where instead of just enjoying basketball, man, it's really, 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 really starting to get toxic. And now Nuggets fans, and if you're an NBA fan, you're having to have like really, really interesting conversations about what's happening and why. And I know the crazy thing is that, again, I apologize, y'all, for the video quality. I have no idea what's happening right now. I don't know why it's acting like this. So please forgive me for why it's like this. But we're in a situation now where we're having to find other ways to talk about basketball that have nothing to do with the on-court product. And I don't know if Jokic is feeling the pressure about this. I don't know if this is bothering him. But Jokic has addressed this in the media twice now. He addressed it the first one and talking about the stat padding comments. But then now he addressed seeing Kendrick Perkins and seeing comments that were made and suggesting that they just needed something to talk about. But I think what's happening is that Jokic is in a situation where I think he might be feeling external pressure made in a different way. Like I think it's because he's being propped up as something that he's not. He's being used and like almost like his image is being weaponized instead of his basketball play. So instead of saying 24, 12, and 10 with the best record in the West, now it's like, I wonder, is Jokic getting unfair advantages in the voting? And yesterday during the game, he just felt off versus the Chicago Bulls. He didn't take a lot of shots versus the Toronto Raptors until the last 5 minutes. Now, again, small sample size. But my hope is that when we get through this phase, the next few games, hopefully, as this stuff starts to kind of go away, hopefully, I hope that Jokic will continue to get his scoring volume back up, that his aggressiveness will pick up, and honestly, maybe even tomorrow versus the San Antonio Spurs. And one of the reasons is the fact that the Denver Nuggets, while they're in prime position to win the West, really going away, you also want to make sure that you're playing consistent, good execution and that you're locking in to the process of playing good basketball together, that you're locking in to playing good team basketball, that you're playing defense at a high level. So there's just a lot of stuff that you want to see from him. And I think that we're going to see that happen more and more. But again, some of it goes down to the level of competition they've had to play. I think it had a direct impact on the kind of play that we're seeing from Joker. And we're in a situation now where we're trying to figure out, hey, how do we focus on what's happening in front of us while maintaining health and making sure that as we're keeping everybody healthy, that we're playing the right brand of basketball. And I think that's going to happen more, and I think that's going to happen hopefully tomorrow, and it's going to happen on Sunday. But for sure, I mean, I think people have a right to be frustrated with it. But I have wondered at the very least if this is affecting Jokic and affecting his mentality. Because Jokic has never been somebody to go to the public with and voice something. Not really. And I think to bring up Kendrick Perkins' comments in the last couple of weeks, he's obviously hearing it. He's obviously seeing it. So, yeah.
I'm going to pop in with Swiper here real quick while we troubleshoot some of these technical difficulties. Apologies for that. But if you don't know me, I'm Anilo Piro. You can follow me at Media by AP. And I was at the game last night. I covered the Denver Nuggets alongside Ryan Blackburn for MileHighSports.com. Hope everybody's doing well out there. And I think to kind of piggyback off what Swiper was talking about here, the energy that we got from Nikola Jokic in last night's game was certainly a little obscure and very unlike Nikola Jokic. We were talking about on the radio show that I do for us here at Mile High Sports, and it's one of those situations where he looked like he didn't really even try last night. Like the energy level was low from the jump. He took 9 3-point shots last night. I mean, Nikola Jokic, 9 3-point shots is just an absolutely absurd number for him to take over the course of a game. I believe his previous high in 3-point attempts in a game this season had been either 6 or 5 3-point attempts. And I know I put it out on Twitter at Media by AP. Nikola Jokic yesterday, it was one of those situations where he had more 3-point shots in yesterday's game individually as he had in every single game coming out of the All-Star break to that point. So that was definitely something interesting. But I saw a lot of doom and gloom and a lot of, changing of energy after, what has been obviously a very positive season for the Denver Nuggets in the most part. But a lot of people were kind of worrying that maybe the sky was falling or how could you lose to the 11th place Bulls in the Eastern Conference, whatever it might be. And, I've talked about it with Ryan. I've talked about it with Swipa, a bunch of other people around town here in Colorado. And they've been playing so well at home that they were due for a little bit of that clunker, stinker type of loss. And I think obviously you saw that last night. But it is worth noting that last night's loss against the Chicago Bulls was the first game the Denver Nuggets have lost at home in which Nikola Jokic has played since December the 6th. So it's not like the sky is falling. They've lost a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, now 5 games at home this season. They're 30-5 on the year. And there was a lot of I don't know, a lot of doom and gloom, I guess you could say, on social media yesterday. I've actually seen some MVP odds, if you're into the betting, have moved back a little bit. Jokic is still the favorite, but he was right around minus 350 on some books. And obviously, it's a discouraging game to lose in that capacity, but now they got a get-right game Friday night against the San Antonio Spurs, who are arguably the worst team in the NBA, and then we'll see what they can do come Sunday afternoon against the Brooklyn Nets. But, he's talking about Jokic. I think the other talking point here that is worth bringing up is Jamal Murray. And remember, before the game, he tweeted out, tonight is the night. He's going to try to hit those three-point shots to become the all-time leader in three-point shooting in franchise history. And he was pressing. I mean, I was in and around these players last night. I covered the team for Mile High Sports, got my credential and everything. And it was clear that I think it was a perfect storm of this Nuggets team being on this winning streak. And I mean, really even think back to their previous two games leading up to the loss against Chicago. The game against Memphis, which we all know was a very fun one that turned into a blowout. And then the comeback victory against the Toronto Raptors on Monday night. There's a lot of different dynamics that played out over the course of both of those games. But I think a common denominator, when you look at the Toronto matchup, when you look at the matchup against Memphis, is Denver found a way to flip the switch in the fourth quarter. The first three quarters of both of those games were absolutely rough. And it was disappointing, to say the least, to see how they came out in those first three quarters. But we saw Denver, with that clutch defense in the fourth quarter, really buckled down against both the Grizzlies and the Toronto Raptors. Now, maybe Steve Foster had a little hand in that game against Toronto, but what we saw yesterday against the Chicago Bulls was a complete anomaly from this team from the team this season at home. We just have not seen the Denver Nuggets play that way, give off that type of energy in a game at home like we saw yesterday. So it was perplexing, but I think it's one of those where you got to kind of just chalk it up to what it is. It was a bad performance across the board, and you move on to the next. Again, they got that game against the San Antonio Spurs on Friday, and so on and so forth. But one thing I wanted to say as well about Nikola Jokic is it was the first time since the Kendrick Perkins narrative had been thrown out there that we heard him kind of address the noise and kind of the conversation surrounding the MVP race. And he said something, he didn't really say much, which is not unusual for Nikola Jokic, but it is one of those dynamics where he came out and said, he found it interesting, some of the narratives that were being thrown out about the MVP conversation. And then he also said that, I forget the exact word that he used, but he said it, I don't want to say it was dangerous or I forget, but obviously, very turned off to the entire narrative that is currently surrounding the MVP conversation. And he doesn't care, and I think that was kind of my big takeaway from all of this. And with everything that's been going on is Nikola Jokic is a player that cares more about team success than individual success. And I kind of put on my tinfoil hat. I don't actually believe this, but when Nikola Jokic takes 9 3-point shots in a game, that tells me that he's checked out to some extent. Like, we did not see, that was probably the worst version of Nikola Jokic we've seen in the last 3 years, if we're calling it honest and calling a spade in that capacity. And it is what it is, but I saw Swipa tweeting about this last night as well, and I want to echo it. The team goes as Jokic goes. And when Jokic comes into a game and doesn't do a great job of setting the tone or setting the energy or picking the team up as they go along, that's when the wheels start to fall off with this team. Because as much as Jamal Murray is a good player, as great as Michael Porter Jr. can be, as solid as Aaron Gordon has been this season, those guys don't have the ability to impact the game in a positive way in the manner and the decisiveness that a Nikola Jokic can do. And it's weird. If we want to, bring it back to the MVP conversation, and I know he played yesterday and just didn't play well. It was a bad game. But again, I don't think he came into that game with the most energy that he should have. It almost helps his case for MVP to an extent of when he takes a night off or he lags or he stutters in a game like he did last night or he's disinterested, it shows you how everything around him crumbles. And the Denver Nuggets are a team that thrive off of the energy that Nikola Jokic brings to the court game in and game out. And just to kind of summarize it, I was there, like I said, talking to Michael Malone. We talked to Bruce Brown after the game yesterday. We talked to Jokic after the game. No panic. It's just a matter of, you chalk it up to a Wednesday game after 2 emotional victories against Memphis and Toronto, 2 games in which you clamped down in the fourth quarter. We saw this coming, and I'm the host of the Afternoon Drive show here on Mile High Sports. And one thing that I'd said, if you're playing the numbers, you should have bet the Chicago Bulls against the spread last night. You were getting 9 points. It just felt like the Denver Nuggets were due for that type of letdown performance. And at the end of the day, that's what we got. But I don't expect it to continue. I expect them to kind of snip it in the butt and move along. Granted, I think they have 16 or 17 regular season games left before this season is over. And when we get to the postseason, I would not expect, or I would not be surprised if you saw another clunker loss or two along the way. I mean, the reality of the situation is this Denver Nuggets team essentially has the number one seed all wrapped up. You factor in the Kevin Durant injury, and Phoenix is kind of the one team, as much as I love lighting the beam out there in Sacramento, Phoenix is the one team that seems to propose a real threat to the Denver Nuggets consistently, as we get closer and closer to the postseason. And now Kevin Durant, according to Woj, is going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic because he's not going to have a ton of time to gel with that team before they get to the postseason and so on and so forth. So, we'll see how it shakes out. But at the end of the day, I think last night's game was obviously unfortunate, obviously far from the Denver Nuggets' best, probably their worst game of 2023, if we're being honest here. And I just want to hone in on the fact that they have lost 1, 2, 3, 4, now 5 games at home. They have been very, very strong at home, the Denver Nuggets. And that was the first game that Denver had lost in which Nikola Jokic had played at home since December the 6th against the Detroit Pistons. So it is what it is. You got to turn the page. You got to move on. Like I said, they've got a game against San Antonio now coming up tomorrow. Arguably one of the worst teams in the league. The Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes rolls on, and away we go. But, the nice thing, not the nice thing, but a silver lining is, I've covered the Denver Nuggets with the Cred since I was, 2017, 2016 was my first year. Jokic's rookie year was my first year in the confines of Ball Arena, then Pepsi Center covering the team. That is a loss where you'd see Michael Malone drill into his team. Now, granted, that was a young team. They didn't have the identity that they have now. They don't have the success that they have now. But when it's all said and done, they're turning the page. And I guess, just to kind of put a bow in the conversation, as bad as last night's loss was, don't expect this to snowball or spiral over into the rest of the season. They might have an ugly loss or two, down the stretch here, but I don't expect that to compound down the stretch when it's all said and done leading up to the playoffs. I do think you're still going to get the best version of Denver Nuggets, assuming they stay healthy, knock on wood. But when you have Nikola Jokic, when you've got Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Bruce Brown coming off the bench, Aaron Gordon and company, I mean, their starting five is as good as it gets. And at the end of the day, KCP as well, I know he's been struggling to shoot the three. You got to kind of, to take a page out of the Aaron Rodgers playbooks, relax. That's what you got to do when it's all said and done, because last night's game is 1 of 82, and I know we're getting close to the postseason, but when it's all said and done, I think you attribute that to an off night and a bit of a lazy game for the Denver Nuggets last night. Not saying that they can afford to do that, but when it's all said and done, you got to just kind of chalk it up as that and move along. So we'll see what they can do against San Antonio, and away we go. But be sure to check out everything we got going on at milehighsports.com. Again, I'm Anilo Piro. You can follow me at social media at Media by AP. Swipa is at SwipaCam. We got the weekends with Swipa with Ryan Blackburn coming up this Sunday after the Brooklyn Nets game, so we're looking forward to that. And away we go. But we got all coverage at Mile High Sports. So check us out. Denver Broncos. Avalanche play tonight against the Los Angeles Kings. Should be a good one. CU and CSU just both got bounced from the conference tournaments. If you want to read about that, milehighsports.com is your one-stop shop for all things Denver sports. But all right, I think I talked enough. I think I gave you guys some good meat on the bone with that one. So I'm going to get out of here. Say Thursday night. I got to get some dinner and all that good stuff. So I appreciate you guys. Follow me at Media by AP. We'll be back with Swipa ASAP. Be sure to follow him on social media at SwipaCam. AP signing off. Hope you guys have a good one.